morning, everyone. Very happy to be with you today. So it's a great moment that we're going to share together today. Thank you for being here, both for the ones that are online with us today and for everyone here in person. It's a great pleasure to be able to welcome all of you today. Thank you also to the Press Club team for hosting us today here in Brussels. So I will try to make it very short because we have amazing speakers that will be here today to also describe how the circular fashion industry is thriving in Europe. I'd like to just start by saying that the entire Circular Fashion Federation team is very happy and honored to be with you today. So thank you again for being here. It's a great moment for us because it's the first event that we organize here in Brussels. It's a very special moment as it's an opportunity for us also to gather not only our member in France where we started, but all over the different countries in Europe. And I'd like to say huge thanks to the entire team and especially to our advocacy specialist Clara and our Brussels correspondent Margot for the coordination of the organization of the event here in Brussels, but also to Elie, Lou, Ines, Timothée and Camille for contributing actively to the organization from Paris. Thank you also to our board members and thank you to you, all of you, our dear member of the Circular Fashion Federation for being here with us today. We stand now at a pretty defining moment for the European fashion industry. There is a urgent need for environmental responsibility, and combined with the demand for economic resilience, we are in a current historic opportunity, I would say, to redefine fashion in Europe through circularity. So today the Circular Fashion Federation and its 300 members from across Europe are very proud to introduce our European Manifesto for circular fashion, which is our collective roadmap for more circularity in the fashion industry all over Europe. And I believe that at its core, circular fashion embodies the fundamental values also of the European Union. There is this cooperation across borders, innovation-driven ambition, and also the will to build stronger and more sustainable economy through cross-border collaborations. And so it bridges the circular fashion approach. It bridges artisans and industrial leaders. It bridges as well legacy brands and pioneering startups that you will discover during the different pitches, and the public institutions as well and the private actors, fostering altogether collaborations that accelerate also more sustainable ways of consuming fashion. So we'll need strong internal cooperation within the EU. That will be very essential to create also this cohesive market for sustainable fashion. And this unified approach will not only enable Europe to lead by example, but also to be at the forefront of the sustainable leaders in the world. And I believe that with the team, by working all together, the EU can also drive international standards through circular fashion, foster knowledge exchange, as well as building resilient supply chains that benefits the entire global fashion system worldwide. So this manifesto that we officialized all together today is actually a pretty great symbol of that cooperation, I believe. It's the result of a very deep and collaborative work along the previous months. I'd like again to thank you deeply, all the public institutions, all of our members that contributed to it, because it has been shaped by the expertise, the commitment, the in-field feedbacks from fashion houses, digital platforms, manufacturers, recyclers, policymakers, and visionary entrepreneurs. And it's a pretty invaluable contribution that we have here, and it enables us to now define a clear pathway throughout a more circular fashion industry in Europe. So we extend our deepest gratitude to our members for this participation, to the European institution, national governments, and regional bodies, because we are now building a clear way to strengthen also circularity at scale. So the momentum is pretty undeniable, and I believe the best is yet to come. And as we embark also in this transformative journey, We have to reform together our shared commitment of designing, producing, distributing, and consuming fashion in a better ways, in ways that basically aligns with our deep cultural value here in the EU. This is not just a transition, it's the future of the European fashion industry. So together, let's seize this moment and shape a circular fashion economy that inspires the world. Long live European circular fashion, and thank you very much. So yeah, I will give the second part of the introductory speech to our dear Majdoulin Zbay, who will also complement this introductory speech as a member of Parliament. Welcome, Majdoulin.
I plan to speak in French, and I hope that it's not a problem for you. And if you want, I can translate a part of my speech, because I prepared this in French, so I'm so sorry. I discovered when I arrived here that it was in English. If you don't mind, it will be in French. So, je suis membre du Parlement depuis juin 2024, donc il y a peu de temps de cela. Et je connais beaucoup de visages ici, et beaucoup d'entre vous me connaissent, puisque je suis et française, je parle français, et aussi très engagée depuis longtemps dans la mode circulaire pour transformer l'industrie de la mode. On m'a demandé en introduction de vous parler de mon parcours. Je vais essayer de respecter le timing et de ne pas faire trop long, mais simplement vous dire que moi, je viens d'un territoire qui est non loin d'ici, qui est Roubaix, qui était une grande ville textile, industrielle, et qui a subi le revers de ce qui s'est passé avec l'essor de la grande distribution en France dans les années 80, à savoir le fait qu'on décide de sous-traiter à des pays à bas coût de main-d'œuvre, souvent en Asie du Sud-Est, la fabrication textile. C'est aussi le choix de ne plus investir dans de la modernisation de toutes ces entreprises. Il faut imaginer ce que ça représente pour un territoire dont Roubaix, c'était une ville champignon, et toutes les villes autour ont été construites de la même manière, c'est-à-dire qu'on a aménagé la ville autour de l'industrie. Et lorsqu'on enlève l'entreprise, eh bien, ça n'est pas simplement l'économie qui change, c'est aussi tout le tissu culturel, social qui est déstructuré. Donc ça a été un séisme. Moi, j'ai grandi dans cette période de l'histoire qui était marquée par ce chômage de masse et ces difficultés sociales. Et en grandissant, j'ai voulu comprendre. C'est pour ça que j'ai fait des études de sociologie, de sciences politiques. Et puis, j'ai essayé d'être une partie prenante des solutions. J'ai fondé une université populaire, un restaurant coopératif. Mais quoi que je faisais, on tournait toujours autour de cette histoire de la mode, de l'habillement qui avait marqué mon territoire. Et donc, j'ai décidé à un moment de me plonger dans la compréhension de cette histoire de l'industrie textile, cette histoire plus longue, mais aussi cette histoire récente au travers de l'écriture d'un livre, au travers aussi de plaidoyer. J'ai joué, j'ai un peu plus âgé qu'un certain nombre d'entre vous, le rôle de lanceuse d'alerte assez tôt pour dire qu'on prenait le mauvais chemin aujourd'hui dans cette industrie. En 2013, vous le savez tous, il y a eu ce tournant de l'effondrement du Rana Plaza. On a l'habitude de tout le temps le rappeler, mais il faut savoir que c'est une des catastrophes industrielles modernes les plus importantes. Et elle résonne beaucoup sur mon territoire, puisque c'est à peu près le même nombre de morts que la catastrophe de la mine de Courrières un siècle plus tôt. Et donc, on avait cette histoire industrielle. Et moi, quand ce moment arrive, je suis avec des anciens ouvriers du textile qui ont monté une association culturelle pour parler du patrimoine, des savoir-faire, etc. Et ils ont eu vraiment une réaction très émue en se disant finalement nos histoires, c'est les deux faces d'une même médaille. Ce qui se passe au Bangladesh et ce qui s'est passé sur notre territoire, ça se ressemble beaucoup. Et donc c'est un tournant où on sent qu'il y a un essor possible d'une alternative à l'industrie de la mode telle qu'elle existait. Et donc, moi, je décide avec d'autres de monter une initiative que vous avez probablement connue, qui s'appelait Nordcrea et ensuite Fashion Green Hub, et qui a créé le premier forum national de la mode circulaire. Ça peut paraître anodin, mais à la fois lancer l'alerte et proposer une solution concrète qui consiste à dire que l'économie circulaire est l'avenir de la mode, mais de l'économie plus généralement. Eh bien, c'était une forme de révolution, ou en tout cas, c'est l'intention qu'on avait lorsqu'on a créé ce forum. Il faut savoir aussi qu'on a mis à l'agenda des politiques publiques. Je pense notamment à notre premier partenaire qui est l'ADEME, l'Agence de l'environnement et de la maîtrise de l'énergie, qui était partenaire et parrain de ce forum. eh bien, on a mis à l'agenda politique le fait que dans la stratégie économique de la France et dans la stratégie économique circulaire, il ne fallait pas oublier la mode et l'habillement. C'est rien du tout aujourd'hui, c'est une évidence, mais à l'époque, je vous assure, quand j'allais voir les gens, moi qui avais travaillé beaucoup sur l'aménagement urbain, qui avait été vice-présidente de région, et que je leur disais, je veux vous parler de mode, ils me disaient, ah, elle a besoin de se distraire, elle a besoin de légèreté, de futilité. Je leur ai dit, c'est un sujet très sérieux. Et grâce à beaucoup d'acteurs qui ont lancé des initiatives à cette époque, enfin, on a réussi à le faire. Je vais aller vite sur pourquoi je suis ici. Moi, si je suis ici, c'est parce qu'avec l'initiative que j'ai prise à Roubaix et en France, avec Fashion Green Hub, avec des événements, de la formation professionnelle, la création d'un atelier de fabrication à la demande, et je vous en passe, en fédérant des tas d'acteurs, des grandes et des petites entreprises, il y a un moment où après le Covid, alors qu'on avait fait des masques pendant 6 mois, on s'est rendu compte que la question de la relocalisation, de la transformation du business model de la mode était mise en danger par la concurrence déloyale des sites de e-commerce. Et qu'en fait, même si on peut se dire, bah non, le e-commerce, ça concerne que les pas-prix, ceux qui sont dans d'autres segments de marché, ça ne marche pas. Et puis ceux qui font tout bien et qui font de la mode éthique et éco-responsable, ça va bien se passer pour eux. Sauf que ce n'est pas comme ça que ça marche. La tendance globale du marché, la manière dont aussi les grandes entreprises, les grandes marques enseignes, dont certaines ont fermé, je pense à Camaïeu, mais à plein d'autres, eh bien, ça entraîne une dépréciation ou une forme de recul des possibilités d'innover, de prendre des initiatives. Parce que nous, par exemple, dans notre initiative Fashion Green Hub, nous avions des grandes entreprises qui collaboraient avec les petites, celles qui venaient de créer des nouvelles activités. Et donc, finalement, ce rétrécissement, cette inquiétude et cette anxiété faisaient qu'on revenait en arrière sur du business as usual. J'ai vu des marques devenir des entreprises à mission, choisir de nouvelles politiques de prix, choisir de relocaliser et décider de retourner en arrière parce qu'elles voulaient survivre sur le marché. Et quand j'ai vu ça, je me suis dit, en fait, si on ne change pas les règles du jeu au niveau européen, eh ben, ça ne sert à rien. J'aurais beau m'époumoner, me fatiguer, c'est comme vider l'océan avec une petite cuillère. C'est pour ça qu'aujourd'hui, j'ai décidé, en tout cas il y a quelques mois, et aujourd'hui je siège au Parlement, dans 3 commissions. La première, c'est la commission commerce international. Je me bats contre la concurrence déloyale. Ma première question au commissaire Šefčovič, commissaire au trade, ça a été, je veux une commission d'enquête pour Chine. Je veux que vous passiez au crible de toutes les législations existantes en Europe en matière de protection des consommateurs, de droits d'auteur, de propriété intellectuelle, de toxicité, ce qui est vendu chaque jour sur ce site Internet. Et c'est fait. On a gagné. La commission d'enquête a été créée. Je veux aussi vous dire qu'un des sujets qui concerne aussi la régulation du commerce international et des produits qui sont importés, c'est la question de la toxicité. C'est pour ça que je suis en commission environnement et santé. Aujourd'hui, j'ai commencé par travailler sur des sujets qui sont un peu périphériques, mais bientôt arrive la directive REACH en révision. Mais aussi, on souhaite lancer des initiatives spécifiques sur le sujet. On s'intéresse aussi parce que la mode, c'est souvent un mode de vie. Et donc, on s'intéresse aussi aux cosmétiques et aux détergents, par exemple, qui sont dans notre quotidien. Donc, détoxifier notre quotidien, c'est aussi une façon de sensibiliser, de montrer aux gens qu'il y a des alternatives. Les droits de douane, vous savez, moins de 150 €, je ne vous fais pas l'article. Je pense que beaucoup de vous ont participé à des plaidoyers qui consistent à considérer qu'aujourd'hui, c'est pas normal que des colis, vous savez, entre 2023 et 2024, on a doublé le nombre de colis Chine qui sont arrivés sur le territoire européen. Ça ne paye pas de droits de douane, ça n'est pas normal. On veut absolument accélérer la révision. Et puis, il y a d'autres actions qui sont menées. Vous allez rencontrer mes collègues durant cette matinée, notamment, je pense à Saskia Bricmont, puisqu'avec elle, une des premières choses aussi qu'on a faites en arrivant au Parlement européen, c'est de tenter de monter un intergroupe sur le textile. On n'a pas tout à fait réussi, mais je vous rassure, on a un intergroupe informel qui bosse très bien. Et donc, j'ai des copines dans la commission IMCO, donc c'est la commission du marché intérieur et de la protection des consommateurs, qui travaillent sur la question de l'affichage environnemental, bien sûr de la stratégie textile durable et circulaire, mais aussi de la question des allégations environnementales et de l'éco-conception et de l'éco-design. Donc, tout ceci, on le prend à bras-le-corps. On essaye que dans chacune des travaux du Parlement, ce soit une préoccupation. Je terminerai par vous dire que moi, je pense qu'il y a des combats stratégiques. Il y a par exemple le combat des matières premières. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, le volume de polyester mis sur le marché dans la mode et l'habillement, il faut que ça stoppe. C'est un des combats qu'on doit mener pour l'avenir. Parce qu'en fait, le polyester, c'est ce qui rend possible de faire des grands volumes, des grandes quantités, rapidement, et d'inonder le marché, et on ne sait plus quoi en faire après. Donc, c'est un vrai sujet stratégique. Je crois aussi que la semaine prochaine, la Commission européenne va annoncer son Clean Industrial Act. les écologistes ont fait un position paper dans lequel ce que je viens de vous dire est écrit, ou en tout cas les grandes lignes. Et donc, on va essayer d'influer ces nouveaux investissements massifs pour qu'ils aillent à l'économie circulaire. On a une bonne nouvelle, c'est que la commissaire qui est en charge de ces sujets a annoncé qu'une des grandes politiques qui serait menée, c'est l'économie circulaire. On a un boulevard, on a 4 ans et demi pour moi, un peu plus pour vous peut-être, pour essayer de faire en sorte que le textile en soit une part importante. Moi, je crois aux investissements massifs dans l'innovation en matière de recyclage. Je crois aussi qu'il faut fermer les robinets avant, c'est-à-dire, vous voyez, vous avez compris, amont, et faire en sorte qu'on ait moins de produits qui arrivent sur le marché. C'est pour ça qu'un des combats que vous menez et que je mène aussi, c'est de faire en sorte, et là je parle pour la France, que la loi anti-ultra fast fashion passe au Sénat, parce que nous devons vraiment adopter ces mesures fortes. En tout cas, pour tous ces sujets, je suis hyper mobilisée, contente d'être avec vous, contente de vous voir aussi nombreux, et j'espère que dans ce que je vais aussi découvrir ce matin, j'aurai plein d'inspiration pour faire encore mieux, pour un Green Deal encore plus fort, qui concerne la mode circulaire, qui concerne cette activité formidable qui consiste à embellir les gens, les habiller, les vêtir. C'est une industrie créative, on en est fiers et on veut qu'elle continue à exister très longtemps. Merci.
Hello everyone, I'm gonna let my guest join me. I'm super happy to see you all here today and to meet a lot of you that we didn't know before, and to see some new faces. So I'm super happy to meet you all. I'm Ellie, I'm a chief officer at the Fédération de la Mode Circulaire, so Circular Fashion Federation. Perfect, Saskia is there too. To launch this first panel that will target how we can use circular fashion to promote a better fashion industry and competitiveness at a European level, we're going to have 4 super brilliant panelists to target all of this with us. And so for us, it's a super important event because we've been doing advocacy at a French level ever since we've started the federation almost 3 years ago. And so we've published 3 different editions of the Programme commun pour la mode circulaire, so common program for circular fashion. But with this manifesto, it's really a huge step for us to be able to target directly the European public sector and the European regulation. So we're super happy to be here to discuss this with you all today. I'm going to let my panelists present themselves, and then we will be able to deep dive into the subject.
Hello, I'm Pascaline Willem. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. In a few words, my background is a textile designer, and I'm a textile and material lover. I have to admit that it's really important for me. I started my career in the industry, in a spinner, weaver, and printer in eastern France. And I set up a consultancy agency with a colleague, and we had the opportunity to work across the entire value chain, from the design of raw materials to construct a specific product for high-range brands. And after a chance encounter, I have to admit, I had a fantastic job as fashion and artistic director in the Première Vision group, and have the opportunity to expand my knowledge to a European and international level with manufacturing, leather, and a lot of different kind of industry. But I learned a lot during all these years, and now for 3 years now, I founded a consulting agency, PW New, dedicated to eco-strategy and perspective, art direction in different kind of of products and a lot of different things, and the pleasure to construct teams and to try to highlight a different kind of beauty. And so in the same time, I was really lucky to learn the Enamoma team. It's a program constructed by PSL University, and it's a collaboration between 3 entities with Dauphine University, École des Arts Décoratifs, and École des Mines, so 3 kind of mind. So we construct a program and a master that mix fashion and materials. It's an international program in Paris, and I have to admit that is the only top-level French public fashion school with a non-classical training. You know, we mix different profiles of students. We mix design, management, and engineer, and we try to give to the student the free will to construct new models for the future of fashion and textile world. And in the same time, I have to admit that I'm really proud to be a board member of the Fédération de la Mode Circulaire and to be an active actor for change in fashion with people and community and company engaged for a better future, I hope, where creation is an absolutely an essential lever in circular economy and globally in the life, we have to admit. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monica. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Recobo. I've been in the fashion industry for 10 years. I'm super interested in fashion and this sector. I'm very passionate about it. I've been the last 5 years obsessed with circularity in terms of efficiency. For me, I think it's something that it's very smart to implement in companies for the bottom line of the companies, but also for the planet. So I'm super obsessed in the efficiency of process, efficiency of resources, in terms of implementing circularity in fashion companies. This led to Recobo. Recobo is a company for fashion industry. We have developed a SaaS in order to manage waste, textile waste in different aspects, and to manage circularity for companies. We create a digital library of all the leftovers in the warehouses across different fashion suppliers, and the idea is to increase circularity of operations in companies. We allow them to take a look to this library, to every employee in different areas of the company, and they allocate the materials in new projects, from new products, accessories, bags, but also runway shows, window materials, any kind of material a company may need, exhibition materials. So the idea is to boost their reuse, and if the material is not taken into a new project, they can sell it in Recobo Marketplace. So this is what we are building here. I'm very happy to be in this event with the Federation, and thank you for having me here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Agata Kotkowska. I work in the European Commission in the Director General Environment, in the Directorate for the Circular Economy, then in the unit of the Circular Economy, Sustainable Production and Consumption. And I am there deputy head of this unit, dealing with different legislative and non-legislative measures, tackling also textile. I don't want to go in detail, probably we will discuss this, but I'm very, very happy here, especially with such an honored and a very passionate and also very passionate and obsessed by circularity speakers. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Saskia Bricmont, MEP from Belgium, French-speaking Belgium, colleague from Majduline that just spoke to you this morning. I'm really delighted to be here too, because I'm also a fashionista. And entering in politics, I wondered how I could, try to combine my passion for fashion. And if I wasn't in politics, I would probably be in the fashion world. And I can still become a designer, right? It's not over yet. But how to combine political work with this passion. And that's how I joined, for instance, the International Trade Committee, because I work, and we'll come back to that, on fair trade. And we know that it's a complex issue, a worldwide issue, and we could work on it through different perspectives. Waste, environment, water, but also trade. And that's how I decided to also focus my work on textile and the whole issue of supply chain, combining this with circularity, but also social aspects and labor aspects. So I think it's also important to have this in mind when we promote circular economy. It has, of course, an environmental dimension, an economic dimension, but also a social dimension. And this is important for me too. And Majduline has already talked about it. The aim under this mandate is really to create this shadow intergroup of MEPs that want to work on textile in a large way. So through different lenses, each and one of us in our committees can have an impact at the end. If we all work together, I think we are stronger together. And of course, the aim is also to work with you, stakeholders. So do not hesitate to reach out to us, because we also want to, as I say always, push the walls of the parliament and work with civil society. So voilà, this is an invitation to you.
Thank you very much to all four of you for being with us today. We're going to start with you, Pascaline. So as you said, you're a board member of the Federation, and you've been committed in the work group that we've created 2 years ago together on circular creation, that we work with Léopold Féjean for almost 2 years now. And so in this work group, we've worked all together with around 20 of our members. And we started this work group to target in the first place the question of the definitions around circular fashion and all the different practices that it implies. Could you tell us a bit more about the work that you've been doing in this work group?
Yes, thank you, Ellie. Yes, it was really a human part of discovery with so many professions, so many kind of people, of know-how. And in the federation, what is really important, and we create this group just after the creation of the federation, and we speak a lot with Maxime and Ellie at this period to say, okay, circular economy is obviously environmental, social, economic, but the product and the creation are fundamental, and we have to include it. And the question of the future of beauty, the question of future of fashion is really inside this global question. We cannot separate the word in a different silo. I don't know how to say in English, sorry. But it's really important to try to, how can we go further in creation in this new world? Not only with AI, but with all the different roles, and how can we make it desirable? Today, it's really a question. The offer of textile and of fashion is reducing globally the level of creativity and the level of what we can say. not to be sexy, but to be happy with with garment. You know, today it's really important. So we make groups, different groups with people, and in these. A lot of invisible players in the Federation of Mode Circulaire were highlighted, and it was really interesting to discover a lot of know-how objectively I didn't know. So it was a fantastic sharing ideas and fantastic question to share. But really quickly we discover that we don't speak about the same thing. And the definition of the things are not the same, and the knowledge are not the same. It's really complicated to construct if you don't know if we speak about the same thing. So a lot of discussion about what is upcycling, what is leftover, what is reuse, what is recycle, what is the waste. And it was incredible because we opened a lot of different kind of question and deep question. And we were lucky in the Federation because we have a super expert like Atem here to speak about all the economy of waste, for example, just to say this example. And it's really important to share the knowledge. And okay, we began with Leopold and all the team to find the way to have the good definitions. So it was hard because we are not necessarily legal-minded in our way of thinking. So we make some draft and we give then the results, draft results, to the regulatory affair working group, and it was really fantastic because they can give voices to this first draft and have time to think about creation, because we are connected to speak about creation, and creation begin by the raw materials, and as you said, in the knowledge, the way to construct a local supply chain. We have solution in Europe, so we speak about European cotton, we speak about linen, about hemp, about French wool that open a lot of question of European questions, and it's a way, you know, in federation to disseminate the knowledge and to try to make it important and to communicate. Today it's so complex. We have to communicate a lot and the training and the education and the work we make at ENAMOMA and globally in the fashion school are really interesting today to open the question, and I think we are not enough to do it, and we are really proud to be here today in Brussels and in Europe to say, okay, yes, go and come with us. We need you, clearly.
Thank you very much, Pascal. And indeed, this work that we've done through the work group was really important in the question of the definition that we included in the manifesto today. And so, leading on to the question of the law proposition that Majdoulin mentioned earlier in France, the question of the definition is a big one, and especially around what we see as fast fashion and as ultra fast fashion. Why is it so important for you and for the whole sector, according to you, as to why we have to give those definitions to the right words and use it collectively so that we are sure to target the right practices?
Yeah, you know, fashion and history of fashion is okay. We know it's a mirror of the society. it's so important. And okay, fast fashion, ultra fast fashion. When we see the 100 years ago how fashion evolved, now it's we are at the end perhaps of a cycle. And to define it is not only to define, is not enough to define. It's I think there is no time today to soft concessions. We have to attack. I'm sorry, but it's we cannot be polite with reality. The world today is in a bad way. You know, we cannot enter in confusion with fashion and with the reality of the world. So the definition of this world are very little step. Very, very little step, and we know we have to reduce, we have to repair, we have to do well, we have to cultivate in a good way, we have to take care about people, and there are solutions, and we have to communicate the nice solution because there are, and it's not only an idea, it's a reality, and it's an industrial reality, and thanks to Europe to help to highlight these good initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agatha, on your side, you work on circular economy, of course, and in mobilizing the private sectors to implement some solutions in the regulation at the European level. And you've worked a lot on the Single-Use Plastic Directive, the EU Ecolabel regulation, the directive on green claims also. Could you tell us a bit more about what was your work in that, and how does it impact the fashion industry and fashion companies?
Yes, but first, before that, I would like to congratulate first. It's excellent manifesto. I mean, the ideas there show how deep knowledge you have gathered and how how big expertise you have in the circular economy and circular fashion. That's congratulations. I read this with very big interest, and I am sure my colleagues will also do. But coming back to your question, yes, as you know and mentioned in the speeches, that the circular economy is one of the key priorities of the of the mandate of the European Commission now, and textiles is as a value chain that is has a particular potential for circularity. We have talked a little bit about that, also because it's very intensive in terms of the nature, in terms of water and all, and it has also negative environmental impacts. That's definitely, we know about that. And in our work, we started already in 2022, set up a strategy for sustainable fashion and circular textile. And that was the framework that gave an impetus and actions for the legislative and non-legislative actions. And one of them you have mentioned actually is the Green Claims Directive proposal that has been tabled by the Commission in 2023, and right now is by the co-legislators in the agreement, or in the co-legislative process of getting an agreement, hopefully already in the first half of this year. So we were working intensively on the Green Claims Directive, and that's a new regulatory framework that from one side gives an certainty, legal certainty, and that's what Pascaline was talking about, the definition and the how to say, the wealth of the what fashion and circular fashion brings in, right? Wealth of legal complexity and legal aspects bringing in. So from one side, it will bring in a legal certainty and a level playing field for the companies, for the private companies, and that's, I think, it's very important to say. From other side, it will give the consumers an assurance, and will have a big impact. What actually is green? What are we talking about? So in that sense, the Green Claims Directive The proposal will, and now it's the proposal being discussed by the co-legislators, will give empowering power to the consumers, also by taking a decision what consumers are buying and what kind of products are buying. And by doing this, it will create an effective demand for the circular textile and circular products. The other aspect of our work is, you mentioned already, the EU eco-label regulation, and that's I think it's a very powerful tool that shows to the market the products in the upper class, in the class of the excellence in terms of the green aspects and environmental aspects. Also, it shows an innovation for the company and the kind of path towards it. And there are also eco-label criteria for textiles among the other product groups for textile. And we are happy to calculate it or to announce that there are more than 10,500 products by the end of this year, of the last year, products that have been awarded with the label. And being awarded with this eco label the guarantees sustainable fiber sourcing and production, excluded of minimized hazardous substances. Today we have heard how taxation is very important. And it also underlies the energy uses, efficiency processes in the energy uses, long-lasting products, and corporate social responsibility. So eco-label, as such, is a garant for the good quality, environmental and social responsibility, responsible products, and that's also part of our work. And you mentioned also the single-use plastic directive. It's set up in 2018. This doesn't have a direct impact on textile, but it fits the same narrative needed, right? So we don't want to have just the garments that are used and quickly disposed and forgotten in a few moments later. So it's a way how we tackle the sustainability with the single-use directive, single-use plastic directive. So you can see that overall these initiatives that we have already put in place help to foster circular fashion. And it will be, it is also, maybe I will take over later on. There are so many legislative instruments already planned and will be put into place. Just 2 days ago, the European Parliament, together with the European Council, has achieved the political agreement on the waste directive. And in this waste directive, we have mentioned there about the targets for the waste, textile waste, and also there is an agreement on how the member states will introduce the fast fashion into the EPR scheme. So I think we are on the good way in terms of the measures, but more needs to be done.
Thank you very much. And indeed, the first regulations that you mentioned have a pretty broad scope, and the revision of the EU Framework Directive and the EU Strategy for Circular and Sustainable Textiles are more, of course, targeted on the fashion industry. Could you tell us a bit more about those and how they will have consequences on the fashion companies?
As I mentioned, the strategy has set up the certain set of the measures, legislative measures, one of them being the sustainable product, eco-design product regulation that fosters eco-design requirements, and we are talking here about the durability, reusability, repairability, fiber-to-fiber recyclability of textile. And right now, I think even these days, I am not sure though, but I think we will have an eco-design forum where the work plan for the first set of the products will be discussed with the industries and with different stakeholders. And there we, in this work plan to be set up by April this year, we pretty much know that the textile will be one of the first priorities to tackle with. And in that sense, in this context, there is already a proposal to have a ban on destruction of unsold and returned textiles. So, and this I think is very good way to go forward, right? Because we know, or we have pictures in our heads of this unsold goods, quite often exported outside of the EU, and that's a real problem, not only in the European Union but also externally. And we have heard about the global dimension of the circular textile or textile industry itself. So therefore, for example, the ship waste regulation tackles this to a certain extent, and introduced to halt the practice of moving the waste issues outside of the EU to third countries. And this waste shipment regulation that is already in place since May last year has introduced stricter rules in terms of the export of the textile waste from the EU, and also between the member states. So you see that this regulation has tackled the aspect of the textile waste, and of course, I think the important part of the whole legislative framework is extended producer responsibility. You have mentioned this very thoughtfully in your manifesto, and this is also a part of the waste directive, and also will be part of the ESPR regulation. And there we want to put the schemes in place which will require producers to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of the products. So in particular, in the end of the life cycle of the product. And in our proposal that is already, as I said, 2 days ago adopted, that was a strong emphasis put on the contributions of the producer to be based on the circularity and environmental performance of this product. So the producers take responsibility for the whole life cycle of the textile. I think that I would stop here, but Pascal, you mentioned how important is innovation. Yeah, so let's talk about the design, about the innovation. Let's talk circularity to the heart, and also to the to the form, to the as a principle when designing the products, when designing fashion, when designing textile. And here, of course, the big role plays in the collaboration between all stakeholders involved in the process. Being the producers, being industry, being like you, fashionista. Excuse me, my English is not so good. Apologize for that. So I think it requires the collaborative approach from all of us, where the European Commission is partner of it.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Saskia, on your side, you've been appointed as the MEP last June. Could you tell us a bit more about what your group has been doing ever since? And you're also part of the INTA and IMCO commission. So, yeah, could you tell us a bit more about what you've been doing for the fashion industry, please?
Thank you. It's already my second mandate. And so I will also talk about what we did under the previous mandate, because what Agatha just presented to us this morning, if you're not familiar with the whole context, it's a revolution actually in the sector, right? And this is the textile strategy, circular economy strategy is part of the Green Deal. famous or now unfamous Green Deal. And what is really making us really angry as Greens is that now politically some groups are attacking the Green Deal, although we see all the positive steps that have been taken by the Commission under the last mandate, leading to new legislations at EU level, and the sector is following. I mean, there is a true appetite and a true ecosystem that is being created around these pieces of legislations that go hand in hand, and that create also a legislative ecosystem that makes it possible. What should have been done under this mandate is to put in place the structures, the accompanying system to make this happen. For instance, to take one example, in the eco-design regulation, the fact that unsold textiles is not allowed anymore to become waste. Imagine for the fast fashion industry, this is a huge, it's supposed to have a huge impact, right? And so I think we haven't talked about this enough for the moment, and it will really be something. And all together, also with the industry, I think we have to keep pushing the Commission and all the political groups to act all together in the same direction, because there will be no economic competitiveness of the European Union without circular economy, without sustainability. The Green Deal is the precondition of a sound economy for the EU, especially now in the current geopolitical context. So adding to what Agatha said, and without completely, sans vous assommer de trop, I think it's also important to mention the due diligence legislation that we've been working on extensively with my group. I also want to mention Heidi Hautala in our group, who was a former MEP that really, with other groups, of course, worked extensively on this legislation, which is important also for the textile sector, identified as a high-risk sector. There's also a backlash on the due diligence legislation and a willingness in the omnibus legislation to reduce its impact. So let's hope it will not be too much the case. We will see. Forced labor regulation. This also has an importance in international trade dimension because the aim is to avoid products issued from forced labor to be sold on the EU market. It will be a system based on a complaint. So it's not, it will be a withdrawal from the markets. It's not a ban at the entry, which is, voilà, not completely what we wanted, but nevertheless, it's also a step forward. The waste directive, and you've touched upon, I think this is also a key legislation, although there is an emergency today for the social economy sector. Because in this frame, we know that the obligation to sort and to take the second-hand textile back also creates a huge weight on the shoulders of the social economy sector, and so the extended producer responsibility, we should accelerate it, and it should be put in place very quickly in order to also tackle the consequences of the legislation on certain sectors. And then that are the main aspects I wanted to touch upon. And we also pushed really hard the Commission in the back to act on chemicals, because this is also something that is, of course, really close to our health. We wear textile clothes every single day, and we know how toxic they are, unfortunately, especially linked to the fast fashion industry. It's bad for the workers in the countries where textiles are being produced. It's bad for consumers that have to wear them. This is linked to the revision of REACH regulation on chemicals. I've worked also with Audrey Millet. I don't know if you know her, but she's a former designer that is now working as an academic on research, and she identified more than 8,000 synthetic chemicals that are used in the manufacturing process. So I really think there's also an emergency in terms of environment, in terms of health, to tackle the issue, and we'll keep pushing for that.
Thank you very much. You mentioned first labors and human rights in general. How do you see human rights and circularity go hand in hand in the future?
They definitely go hand in hand. I think we cannot dissociate both. And if we tackle fast fashion, we know it will also have an impact on the supply chain and at the end on the workers in the textile industry. We've been there's a global consciousness about the issue since the collapse of the Rana Plaza, right? This has been maybe a switch also in people's minds. It doesn't really lead to change in consumption, but nevertheless, it has led to, for instance, the global agreement on safety and security at work. And the partners said how important this kind of voluntary treaty is in order to make change and keep pushing brands to sign this agreement and to comply with rules. Push the brands also to push their suppliers to respect social and environmental standards all along the supply chain. I think revolution is coming, but it will also lead to changes in the supply chain and in the partner countries, and we have to work hand in hand with them. There will also be a huge impact about our model of circular economy on countries that currently live because of our textile waste, right? It has created an economy in countries like Ghana and other countries. I think so too. There too, we have, and this is also at Commission sides, we have to work with those countries in order to explain the EU legislation, how it can impact them and how we can, through partnerships, through Global Gateway, cooperation agreements, also help them in changing the economic sector in those countries. So it's a global issue. I think we have also to promote, and that's what we try to do in international trade, circular economy in trade agreements, in free trade agreements, and to try to adapt the same standards in the EU and in the partner countries. Because we know that what is good for us is also good for the rest of the world and our partners.
Thank you very much. Monica, on your side, you're more on the solution side of things. How do you see from your point of view, the change of regulation and how it affects your business and the fashion industry in general?
So we've been with Recobo for 3 years and a half now, and I see a change in how companies respond. At the beginning, it was very complicated to talk about waste, to discuss about leftover garments, leftover fabrics, very, very hard. And now I see it's different. Companies are more open to speak about it. They have identified the problem. They have quantified the problem in most cases, even though it takes a lot of work to actually understand and have a view of what there is spreading with different suppliers, but the work is being done. I see that companies are proactively looking for solutions and having the time to speak with innovative startups, which in 3 years ago it wasn't like so easy. When I speak about companies, I'm speaking about large corporations, maybe the top 1,000 that we all have in mind. So I see that there is like a lot of interest. Also, I see in these past years that they have created teams. For example, sustainability managers, circularity managers. The teams are growing. At the beginning, it was maybe one person. Now I've seen teams of 8 persons in these companies, which is also very relevant. Some of them focus in pre-consumer, others in post-consumer. Some of them more focused in materials, material durability, or material treatments. Some of them focus more on garments and garment solutions like resale, repairs, rentals, recycle, and many other new innovative solutions. So I do see a change, and I see like a positive approach with what is currently going on and the implementation of circularity. I still see that it takes time to implement in companies and to go faster, but I see a lot of change in the past 3 years and a half.
Thank you very much. That's very good news, actually. How do you see circularity being really commercial level also to promote a competitive fashion industry in Europe?
So circularity is good for the environment, but it is a business opportunity in many, many ways. And for me, as I said at the beginning, efficiency is what I'm most obsessed with. But well, that's just a personal opinion. I think by implementing circularity, companies can improve in many ways. There are many options they can do, from, for example, focusing on the durability of the garments they are selling, by choosing the right materials, by thinking about how those materials are grown, for example, with regenerative agriculture. Also, what is going on with those garments after, implementing programs, for example, for resale, repair, rental, talking about emotional durability of a garment, which is something that for me is very interesting, and companies should also work on that. Designers put a lot of work in creating a design. That design becomes a garment with materials, and those materials need resources. So we also have to talk about emotional durability and consumers to use that garment as many as possible. And companies maybe can increase this conversation or boost this conversation. All in all, I think there are many things going on, and it is an opportunity that I think, for example, for companies, in what ways this can be beneficial for companies. For example, data of the consumers, loyalty of the consumers that are more engaged with the company, that perceive long-lasting products and a good return on investment for that garment they have purchased. Not focusing a lot on trends, buying and that automatically the trend has changed and that garment is out of fashion. Talking more about this, in English it's a bit complicated, non-temporary pieces, again, emotional durability of garment and materials. Also these programs, for example, talking about Recobo, at what I am doing for companies, it helps them save money because they are reusing the materials and allocating them in new projects. They are reducing carbon emissions for the company because they're not purchasing or demanding new materials. And all in all, they are being efficient with the resources they have. Also, repairs is something that I think it's very relevant. And big companies are now educating consumers with this, launching it in their home pages, which is, some have an opinion that it can be greenwashing. For me, I think it's very, very relevant that circularity becomes mainstream. And with that, we have to embrace that. We know that big companies have a lot of power in consumer, and if they give a message about circularity, it's positive because many consumers see it, and many consumers start perceiving it something for the mass market, and that is mainstream. And it is very common to repair a garment, it's very common to resell a garment, or rent a garment. So I think this conversation has to be very, very popular, and not only about fashion or circularity activists, but also about brands and consumers that actually do this.
Definitely, thank you very much. And this is the kind of conversations that we have with the companies every day at the Federation, but also with the brands themselves who want to more and more develop some circular services for their consumers and are more and more aware of the impact that it can have on the fashion consumption in general. Thank you very much to all four of you for your precious insights. It was super interesting for us to learn a bit more about your vision and the what is the circular fashion market today and how we will be able to see these changes in the future. Thank you very much to you all for attending. We're going to take a 10 minutes break and then we will resume with the second panel. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for coming back. I would like to have some time for questions. That's why I insist that you come back. So this second panel is about the European Manifesto for circular fashion, prepared by the Fédération de la mode circulaire, and it's entitled From Vision to Action. So, as it has been already said in the former panel, a lot has been happening for the textile and fashion during the past mandate. We can refer, of course, to the to the EU textile strategy for circular and sustainable textiles. It was the first time that the European Union recognized the impact, the social and environmental impact of fashion. It was also the first legislative package ever to be proposed for textile and fashion. And it was divided into 4 main groups. So 3 are rather legislative. It had already been said by Mrs. Kotkowska. So we have eco-design, production and consumption, and waste. And then there is a 4th part that was, let's say, the carrot, that includes some programs, some funding, and some initiatives to enable this transition. This EU textile strategy was a way to adapt the commitments from the EU Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan, but also to take storage of what happened during the COVID and to propose a more resilient, measures to make a more resilient and more competitive industry at the European level. In this new mandate, as you could see, we are facing a unique set of challenges. So we have the Mario Draghi report that was published last September. This report identified the EU fundamental values, and these fundamental values are prosperity, equity, freedom, peace and democracy in a sustainable environment. And in order to uphold these values, and that the EU is able to guarantee these values to its citizens, it's important for it to change. It's not me, it's Mario Draghi who says it. So it has to be, the EU has to focus on growth and to become more productive while preserving its values. And the only way to become more productive is for Europe to radically change. I'm also quoting Mario Draghi's report. So we could see last week with the presentation of the program of work of the Commission that the Commission has listened to the industry representatives here, has listened to the main stakeholders here in Brussels, but all around Europe, and is focusing on making a bolder, simpler, and faster union. So the focus now is on implementation, is in reducing administrative burdens, and in simplifying the European Union rules in order to have a more competitive, resilient, and prosperous Europe. The European Manifesto arrived at this point, and it's the Fédération de la mode circulaire wanted it as a way, as a practical tool. It has been done in a consultation with the members of the Fédération. We have some here today. And it focused on 5 main areas. So you have the measures regarding competitiveness. I will go back. So you have the competitiveness challenge, the taxation, consumer information, extended producer responsibility, we have talked about it before, and the collection, sorting, and recycling sector. So that is for the vision. And now I would like to present you the actors who are in charge to implement this vision. In charge, indeed. So we will start with you, Mariska. We have Mariska Beur from Euric. Mariska is a professional with 25 years of experience in the family business, the Beur Group. She's also the president of Euric Textiles, the European recycling industries, since its creation in 2019. And the role of Euric is to bridge industry demands and policy. we also have at my left Camille Le Gall, the co-founder of Fairly-Mate, and Fairly-Mate is a traceability and impact measurement solution that works with more than 100 brands across the world. Then, in the center, we have Silvia Turi from Redivivum. She's the CEO and co-founder of a newly born tech startup that develops a new AI-powered solution for analyzing and processing second-hand clothing for various industrial operations. And then, last but not least, we have Mikael Garellick from the Directorate General Grow, who is policy officer there at the textile unit. This Directorate General, also with the one on environment, is the one in charge to develop and implement the legislation included in the European Union strategy for circular and sustainable textiles. And Michael is more particularly in charge of trade and competitiveness issues. And I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Margot Aleix Mata. I head Faire Salon, a consultancy that help the fashion players to understand, take advantage of, and to promote their solutions within the European Union. And if you like podcasts, feel free to listen to Interweaving. It's in all the platforms. So let's start with the first round. So I would like to get to know better the actors that we have today and the challenges they tackle. I will start with you, Camille. So as a French company, you have integrated the requirements of the so-called AGEC law. Is it an advantage to anticipate the European Union legislation?
Yeah, well, I think it's a big topic, being French and speaking of being pioneer. I just start with a short introduction and also a few words of my background, because I started my journey in luxury houses such as Louis Vuitton and Chanel, and discovering with my business partner, Laure, working at H&M at that time, that basically none of the brands were really aware of the background of the industry. And it was really a shock for us as also young players in this industry that none of these players could really and properly analyze the risk on both social and environmental aspects. So that's where we started on the ground, visiting more than 200 factories to deeply understand also the backgrounds of spinners, the struggles of dyeing industries and spinning units, and also identify those risks. And it led us to build this traceability software, enabling suppliers and brands to gather all the information on the supply chains. So basically deep dive on those supply chains, on the sourcing systems, and then perform scores. So we have also an internal LCA engine performing PEF scores, but also French environmental scoring. So our mission is really to empower brands to improve those social and environmental aspects, and really to disclaim also those information to the B2C. And I think we have a short illustration of what we do for people that would like to really scan it. And it drives me to your question on AGEC. Yeah.
Perhaps just to say that for the people online, they can also scan the code online. They should have the slides.
Yeah. And when we speak also of regulation, actually we thought that it's a true opportunity for people to realize that what's done actually by the brands now, it could be a match with the regulation, and everyone should take it as an advantage, a competitive advantage as well, to better know what is happening on the supplies and also better communicate to the B2C. And we truly believe that there is a bridge, a possible bridge in between this industrial world and the B2C. And I think that regulation started with, I would say, a big element on the devoir de vigilance in France, on the due diligence as we have it in France. So if we see it as a pioneer, first framework that drive us today at the due diligence topics on forced labor, it's a great example. But yes, AGEC law, for instance, were a first step into disclaiming the steps, so manufacturing, weaving, and dyeing or printing, to the B2C. So the B2C, the customer, were able to scan a product, but also to read it on the labels. And we have this belief of the power of labeling, having the right information either online or in the store, in order to also give and highlight the beauty of what is behind clothes, in order also to give this willingness of taking care of the garment and having a true story on the upward traceability for garments.
Thank you very much. So one of the challenge indeed was the consumer information in this case. Mikael, I would like to ask you, because in 2022, when the textile strategy was proposed, it gathered the challenges of the textile sector. Since then, I wanted to ask you what are these challenges and if they have changed and how.
Okay, thank you. So a key challenge is that all clothes placed on the EU market comply with the same set of rules. We import a lot of clothes. In 2023, the EU imported 83 billion euros of clothes, and there are 80% of our imports originate in 7 countries. The three big ones are China, Bangladesh, and Turkey. Now, we also have an important EU textiles industry. We have almost 200,000 EU textiles companies that provide for 1.3 million jobs. And we want to create a level playing field on the EU market, and we need to support our industry, which is going through a very difficult time for the time being. Now, the key sustainability challenges were all addressed in the textile strategy, which was adopted in March 2022. So we cover topics such as eco-design, waste, labeling, greenwashing, which was mentioned in the previous panel. This strategy, obviously, it does create challenges for our industry, but it also gives opportunities, and one positive impact is that we will soon have harmonized legislation on the EU market, which is a good thing for our industry. A key challenge is to create a market for circular textiles. We hear from our industry that have invested in production of circular textiles that they have problems to sell the products, and many of these companies have gone bankrupt. So we must create awareness, and we must also create incentives to produce and sell sustainable textiles on the EU market. Now, a big concern is the huge influx of e-commerce sales to the EU market. I heard last year we imported 4 billion packages sold on e-commerce platforms. The Chinese online ultra-fast fashion platform Shein has over 100 million EU users per month. So it's enormous. Again, here we need to create a level playing field, and we must ensure sufficient market surveillance. I will not be too long, just a few more words on trade. As I said, we import a lot of clothes, but we also export a lot. We have a quite big industry. We export almost 40% of our turnover. So in 2023, the EU exported 64 billion euros of textiles and clothing, which provides jobs and opportunities for the EU economy. But we do have a big trade deficit for textiles and clothing of over 50 billion euros. And the high level of imports and also overcapacity in some of our trading partners create add pressures to our industry. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikael. I will go to your neighbor, Mariska. EURIC is an old organization, let's say, older. But in 2019, you create the textile section in EURIC. I would like to ask you, what was the motivation to do so?
What was the reason? Thank you, Margot. I need to turn this thing on, I guess, for it to work. So good morning, everyone. Also from my side, very happy to be here. EURIC was indeed created in December 2019. EURIC Textiles, I should say, because EURIC is the European Recycling Confederation. and they actually represent a multitude of different waste streams. So why was textiles added to the list? Well, what we've seen in the last 2 decades is just massive overconsumption of textiles. That caused for textiles to also be seen by policymakers as a problematic waste stream. That had never been the case. I mean, in the end, textiles were worn. Twice a year you bought new clothing. We don't do that anymore now. And you discarded it, or it went to charities or to social enterprises. And that has really drastically changed. And also, if we look at the prognosis of in the McKinsey report, which was published in 2022, it's even foreseen now with a mandatory separate collection of textiles that the total volume of discarded textiles in Europe will go from 2.7 million tons to 5.5 million tons in the next 5 years, 2030. So I think it's really important to emphasize that, because I hear also really great initiatives here and good ideas, but we have to do whatever we do at scale so it makes an impact. Because it's actually 12:05 already. That's also my message. So coming back to creation of Eurek Textiles, it was much needed. There was also a need for policymakers to be informed and somewhat guided to have a good legislative system for textiles, good regulations. And all of that started happening, which is great, and we got our chance to advocate the interest of our industry. But I still feel like, the little rabbit who's running behind everything and trying to make things happen faster. Because that is a bit of the problem that we're facing now, that the industry is very much underwater due to also the influence of, Michael mentioned it, the ultra-fast fashion. We've seen a drastic drop here in Europe when we look at second-hand textiles that are collected. If you get bad quality in, you cannot use your magic potion and get good quality out for the sorting. So this is something that we're faced with, and those same companies are competing with the second-hand operators on the second-hand markets, offering new clothing, which is price competitive to second-hand. So if we do not succeed to really also inform the consumers about the need to buy second-hand, I would almost like to say, then it's going to be very difficult, because people in the end, and maybe here in Brussels and Belgium a little bit less, but certainly if we look in Eastern Europe, they look at what they have in their pockets. And if they can buy for the same money three items instead of buying one second-hand, the choice is easily made. So there's still a lot of work to be done. This is a bit of background what Eurek Textiles is also working on.
So that was a good thing that Eurek Textile was created.
Yeah,
do so.
Yes, definitely.
I will go to your neighbor, Silvia. So Redivivum, so bringing back to life in Latin, was created in 2022. And I would like to ask you, what was the problem that you saw and that you wanted to solve when creating Redivivum?
Yeah, of course. So hi everyone, I'm super happy to be here and bring a bit of the startup technology perspective to this topic. So in 2022, when we set up the company, the aim was simply to kind of use the relatively new technologies like computer vision and AI models and bring those into the fashion industry, because we kind of felt that it's an extremely rich industry in terms of history and practices, but it was missing out on the innovation side in the past couple of decades. My co-founder was working in industrial automation and engineering before joining the company, and we often discussed that how is it possible that such a great industry worth over 1.7 trillion, it's really huge, it doesn't have that level of innovation that it could really benefit from. So that was our first aim. And then of course, as it is with every startup, the main problem we were tackling has started to evolve from the very beginning to this point where we are right now. There was approximately 2 years of pure research that went into just understanding the supply chain, the different stakeholders, their processes and their daily problems and issues. But I would say that our mission today is still to develop technologies using custom AI, machine learning, computer vision that will help these different stakeholders to overcome these manual bottlenecks and just create much more efficient processes and bring the fashion industry basically into the 21st century as it should be.
Thank you. We will go to the second round. So in this round, the idea is to understand better how these visionaries apply their solutions. So I would like to start with the Commission. It is really important to inform your decisions. How do you ensure that your vision is applicable?
Okay, thank you, Margot. So I will use the revision of the textiles labeling regulation as a best practice example, since it's done in my unit. Now, so what have we done? So we have had many stakeholder consultations. We had a validation workshop with stakeholders, and we also had an online public consultation to be informed what needs to be done. And in addition, we are carrying out an impact assessment. And with this impact assessment, we are figuring out, first of all, if there is a need for EU action. And also we have analyzed the possible impacts of the solutions that we have in mind. Now, a few words about the revision of the textiles labeling regulation. So when you go and buy your sweater or your shirt, at least I always look at the label before I buy my sweater. I mainly look at the origin. I'm always interested to see where it's made. I look at the fiber content. I prefer natural fibers, so I check that it's done or made up of natural fibers. And then sometimes I look how you wash it, not always. Now, today, the only compulsory element on the textile label is the fiber content. So it's compulsory to have on all clothes sold on the EU market if it's 100% cotton, 80% cotton, or 20% polyester. That's compulsory. All other elements on the label are voluntary. So with this revision, we aim to add more compulsory elements on the textiles label. So we are looking at size. Size is not compulsory today. That's also something I look at, of course. It's almost always there, but it's not compulsory. So we are considering to make it compulsory. We are looking at origin. Some people want it, some not. And I'm looking at Ralph. We are looking at care labeling and also circularity and sustainability criteria, as well as allergenic substances. And so these are elements which came up in the consultation with stakeholders and which are being considered to be included on the label.
And that will come up in the proposal?
So this initiative now, so we have done this consultation, and now we are concluding the impact assessment. And the aim is to adopt the initiative in September.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I say one? I just want to mention one more thing very quickly.
Go ahead.
And one more issue which we are looking at is leather authenticity. The EU leather industry is not happy with terms such as vegetable leather or polyester leather. So we are looking at rules to state when a product can be labeled with the term leather. Thank you.
Great.
And maybe a question for you, so Mikael, but on the environmental aspect, what do you consider as the environmental outcome that could be put on the label?
You know that there are many different aspects being considered, still to be decided. It's still a bit early. I know it's been up some to have like a similar labeling scheme that we have for food, A, B, C, D, E, or something like this. What will come up, and if it will even be in the proposal, I don't know. It's still to be decided.
The stakeholders also are on board, so it's also you are informed by that. Mariska, you mentioned the increasing consumption, also the increase of second-hand clothes. You mentioned the challenge, so now I would like to ask you, how do you deal with this situation, and which solutions are you working on from Zurich or from your group in order to tackle them?
Okay, how long do we have? No, I'm kidding.
Not too much.
I will try to keep that as short as possible. Of course, if I look at the industry perspective, so what we ask for from Europe Textiles to the policymakers here in Brussels is, of course, well, the harmonized EPR schemes. But I also want to say something about that because everybody's got a really mouthful of EPR. EPR is not a silver bullet. It is not going to make our industry circular. In my opinion, EPR is a temporary instrument that should facilitate the transition from a linear to a circular model. Because we are sitting here as a Fédération Circulaire, and we also talk about measurements, for instance, to lower VAT on second hand as such. But in the end, reuse is still a linear system. So wherever that piece of clothing is worn again, it will be discarded, and many times also discarded in countries where there is no waste management system. And why is there no waste management system? Because it doesn't pay to collect textiles unless they are of really good quality, like here in Western Europe. If we look outside of Western Europe, the quality of those textiles and clothing is oftentimes much lower. This is why they don't have a separate collection system, for instance, for textiles. So what is really important, yes, we need to have a harmonized EPR, but what we need even more is the ESPR requirements, and actually they should become common practice. And then I specifically want to point out the use of post-consumer recycled textile content in new clothing, because this is the way we will get the wheel turning. And this is the way we can also move towards really circularity. There needs to be a willingness on the side of the producers, maybe a little bit pushed by legislation, of course, to really uptake and commit to using recycled textile content, because then it will also make sense to, collect those discarded third, fourth hand clothes, anywhere, because they can be used as valuable raw materials for recycling. So this is my ultimate solution. It's also my ideal world, where the lifespan is expanded as long as possible. But in the end, we need to have a business model under recycling. We do not have that now, unfortunately. And that is also, hampering or at least slowing down all the technology being developed. Sylvia also has a wonderful technique, but it's not really taking off because we don't have a clear idea of, in the end, what is needed as outcome of that sorting system, and what is needed as outcome of a recycling system. What will a producer incorporate in new products? So these are all pieces of the puzzle that need to come together. And I would also encourage very much designers to engage with recyclers to better understand each other's industries.
So predictability and also perhaps technology, Sylvia. So you are in the side, as I said before, the side of the carrot, let's say. The EU during the past mandate and now also, for instance, with the Textile of the Future initiative, is investing on technology, is investing on business models. So I wanted to ask you, what are the challenges that you face in terms of research and development? What solutions have you found? And is the EU contributing to this in your case?
Yes, thank you. That's a really interesting question because we spent now more than 2 years just looking specifically at the niche segment of collecting and sorting, and there are a couple of lessons learned that I'm happy to share. So basically, I think it's also important to start by just emphasizing that usually when we talk about industrial sorting, we can divide the whole process into 2 main phases, because very often I'm speaking to people, everyone's usually only focused on fiber sorting, which is focused on the recycling fractions, but there is a very important first step is always involved, which is, there are different industry terms, but let's just say it's a first grading process, where all of the textiles have to go through one by one. They will be checked by a human operator for quality, and then they whether think it's reusable, so it can go to different quality categories, or if it's damaged, then it's going to be part of the recycled fraction, which can then be further sorted with infrared technologies for different chemical or mechanical recycling. We were trying to focus on the first part of this process because which is 100% manual at the moment. And in Europe, it's a big problem that with the rising costs of human power, human labor, everyone was looking at solutions like how we could bring in more automation. So one of the first challenges that we have seen is that if you want this decision to be made by a software, you need to create a very similar environment, because how human does it? They just pick up a piece of garment, lay it down, look at it very quickly, check both the front, the back of the garment, and then make a decision. If you want a software to do this, you need to create an environment which is tricky, because you either have to have a human, keep them in the loop, and then they will be presenting the garment to whatever camera or software system. But then it's a question of how does it gonna slow down the process, and how much does it gonna affect the cost if you still have to keep the human in the loop in this process. Because of this, we also looked at different robotics and automation solutions, which is a question of technical feasibility at this point, because in other industries, pick-and-place robotics, for example, already a common thing, but those solutions were mostly developed for other logistical processes where you have to move very fast, rigid objects. But in case of textiles, we learned that those are deformable objects, so it's not so easy, for example, for a system to determine the right picking point. And then you also have to make sure that the garment is presented in the right way, it's laid down, so for example, a camera system can see both sides. So again, we arrived to the question of how long is it going to take for a robotic system to do this when a human can do it very fast. I have seen it with my own eyes many times. Humans are just extremely fast in these industrial sorting environments. So these were a couple of lessons that we have learned, and also that it's not possible to do this alone. So you need a lot of different collaborators. So for example, you need people who understand the robotic system development, you need people who understand the computer vision AI part of this system development, and you also of course need the collaboration of the sorting facilities.
Really interesting. So the positive point also of the EU programs can be the research of partners that can complement what each other does. Camille, I was reading your LinkedIn and I saw a lot of specialities for Fairly Made. So I saw fashion, B2B, traceability, green tech, impact, ESG, CSR, AJEC law, DEF, compliance, eco-design, and digital product passport. So I wanted to ask you, did all these specialities come at once, or did they appear gradually? And how do you deal with the complexity of this system?
Well, I would say that the backbone of all those keywords is also traceability in a sense of knowledge. We do believe that there is an educational role of the traceability aspect, meaning that it does empower the brands within the sourcing, because the better they know the supply chains, the better they can also shift the sourcing habits. And it does have an impact as well at the B2C level. Again, at an educational level, where basically it allows people to better adapt the product with love and understanding. So I would say that those keywords for us are the ones that should get the fashion in another loop. I would say a very positive loop, where taking care of product is back to the routines, and taking care of the product is also at the heart of the responsibility of the brands. And we see, and that was actually the vision and the mission of Fairly Made when we started, is now bridging some regulation, and that's where we are most than happy, because first clients and adopters of Fairly Made were really, I would say, Balzac, Asphalt, or very, I would say, native and CSR native brands, where the traceability and this story were really into the DNA of the brands. Whereas now it's also the matter of big groups bridging like fast fashion, mass market, and luxury brands. And they are committed to the same, I would say, roles and mission, so that they must, because and thanks to the regulation, put a certain amount of data and elements at the highs and at the knowledge of the B2C. So I would say that now we see that those regulation and those keywords are coming at a point where it's a must, and it's not a must and coming and tracking everyone at the bottom part and at a burden of data collecting and everything, but at the level of level up the industry. It's something that we saw also thanks to Ajeklo, a first example and concrete example. The data collection for brands were really a must because they should and they must put the 3 steps on the labeling, but also the microplastic elements, but also the circularity aspect and the recyclability level of the product, meaning that of course it's at the beginning a pain point because you don't have this data in-house, but at some point then you level up and everyone were raising the bar to reach this point. And it comes as well with some key vision and true belief we have is that it must be consistent now, and we should not step back on those elements because it's a matter for us to really come this, I would say, and bring those also regulations to something very virtuous and lovable for the fashion industry, and coming back to our grandma's habits of knowing where does the clothes come from. And I do the exercise with my wardrobe is really to learn each time where does this product come from second-hand or a new product, and taking care again and again to make sure that we keep this aspect of lovable product and respect also of the industry and the fashion industry.
Thank you. So now we will go for the last round of questions. So that I will ask you like in one sentence, each of you, if you can, to say what are your political recommendations to the European Commission for this mandate and the short and long term. I will ask perhaps with you, Sylvia, if you feel like starting.
Yeah, of course. It's hard to make it just one short sentence, but let's try. So I think from our perspective as a startup who is trying to do some work in the fashion industry, I think one of the most important recommendations would be to try to think about some sort of supporting financial grant systems which are designed in a way that it makes it possible for innovators who are working, for example, in a startup format to really engage with those players, the textile collectors, the sorters, because usually the grant processes that we have seen so far doesn't really make it easy for startups to go for them, because these kind of companies like us very often doesn't have the expertise of the resources to put together those very complex applications, which very often require, years of experience in this area. So if there would be like a much more simplified way, that would be really, really good, and I think it would make a lot of progress happening possible.
Thank you. Camille?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One is do not invent too many guidelines. First, start implementing the ones that does exist. Put penalties and make it relevant. Also, that's really my first advice. And the second is don't be weak, because we have the chance to be in Europe. We have the chance to be really in advance on those topics. And please do not be weak, considering what's happening also globally and the step back that does happen in the landscape of everything, like I would say social and environmental also a step back that we face. So please do not be weak.
Thanks a lot. Mariska, same question for Jurek.
Yeah, I'm first going to echo what Camille said. Every piece of legislation is as strong as it is enforced. So I fully agree. Do not be weak there, because if we have legislation in place and the people that are supposed to comply with that sort of lean back and nothing happens, then nothing will happen. Anyway, for me, 3 things. EPR schemes. We do call for harmonized EPR schemes right here in Europe. And that is, first of all, to create the awareness with the brands and with the producers that they do have a responsibility when it comes to textiles and garments at the end of life. Well, I said that before, but the EPR scheme should be complemented with very ambitious eco-design requirements. And then for me, a high priority is incorporating recycled textile content coming from post-consumer textiles, because that is where the challenge lies. And the third, we haven't mentioned that yet, but also to develop a very clear end of waste criteria for textiles. The textile industry is not a European industry, and especially the manufacturing happens outside of Europe. Currently, the process is happening with JRC, very, very beginning stage, where the criteria are set for textiles recycling, and we must ensure also for a good climate for investors here into textile capacity, that whatever the output of the textile recycling process is, that it can be freely transported to manufacturing countries. We should not close our eyes for that. I think it's very important. Last but not least, as a short term, hurry up.
I knew you would say that. I was expecting that. Mikael, I wanted to ask you, will the Commission propose new legislation? We know you already told us that the textile labeling regulation will be revised. And what levers do you see to facilitate legislation implementation, as we see that this mandate is really about implementation?
Yeah. First, to reply to your previous question, I think for me the key here is to provide support to the sector to implement the initiatives that has been adopted. That's key, definitely. We talk about design for sustainable products, but also the establishment of recycling plants. Now, this Commission has a much bigger focus on sustainable competitiveness. Looking at the levers to support our industry to implement the textile strategy, I would like to mention 2 or 3 initiatives. We have established a European partnership under Horizon Europe, which will be launched, I think, before the summer or just after the summer, where we have a budget to provide support to textiles operators to implement the requirements in the textile strategy. That's one level of support that we will provide to the textile sector.
So it's through subsidiaries, or how?
It's through Horizon Europe. It's a partnership under Horizon Europe. Yes.
Textiles of the future.
Yeah. So we have. It's a pilot project. So it's 30 plus 30 million. It's 60 million. But we hope, if it works well, that it will be significantly expanded after these first 2 years. And then what we do as well, we as I mentioned before, we are very concerned by the high level of imports. You mentioned chemicals. We want to enhance and strengthen market surveillance, and especially to look at banned chemicals in clothes. So we need to have a level playing field where all products placed on the market comply with the same set of rules. To conclude, one more lever where we have provided support to the sector is through a transition pathway. So we work together with stakeholders. We created a transition pathway to make the ecosystem greener, more sustainable, and more digital. And we have come out with 50 specific actions in this context. We also asked stakeholders to provide pledges to comply with the actions of the pathway. And to date, we have received 110 pledges. Let me just mention 2 of them. So one company, I think it was Adidas, they stated that they will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2027, I think it was. And then we also have pledges on, for instance, on the social dimension. Another company stated that they will have female representation in management globally to more than 40% by 25. A Finnish company stated that they will produce textiles from recycled fibers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like, we are just, we don't have a lot of time, but I think it will be interesting to take 2 questions. So we have one question, the lady here. Pardon, Ralph.
Thank you very much. As you can see, I'm not the lady, but I hope you can hear me. My name is
yes, we can.
I'm heading the Office of Textile Mode, the Confederation of the German Textile and Fashion Industry here in Brussels, a sector that is strongly dominated by SMEs. And first of all, I would like to congratulate you on this conference. Very topical and very inspiring. Now, if I imagine I had some of my members sitting in the room, they would probably answer, we need less regulation and not more. We need less complexity and not more money to explain complexity. But I have 2 questions. One on a point you mentioned in the Manifesto, and one on origin marking. You mentioned CBAM, and you suggest CBAM as a tool also for the textile and fashion industry. Now, as a matter of fact, CBAM, which is unfortunately something that Europe is doing in isolation without coordinating with other main trading partners, increases the cost of production in Europe, but it doesn't decrease the price of our exports. So people who phrase it simply would say, are we not shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that? Is that really what we want and what we need? Question number one. Question number two. Now I have the privilege of turning 55 years old this year, and that allows me to quote from my own experience to say that it's for 22 years in Brussels that we have been discussing about mandatory origin marking. 22 years. And it has always been rejected by a majority of member states. Why is that? Because it does not make sense. If you take a normal product like a shirt, you have dozens, even up to 3-digit numbers of countries who have contributed in the one way or the other in the production of this. Now, if you apply the rules of origin and you say, this comes from country A, B, or C, what impression do you give to the consumer? Is that helpful? You can answer the question yourself. So let's be honest. And if you want to introduce that, you can make it voluntary. But to launch this as a mandatory origin marking requirement, I mean, sorry, let's be serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. I don't know if there is another short question. Please, the lady there. And then we will.
Good morning, and thank you for the panel, really nourishing. This question is specifically for Mr. Garellick. I was wondering, in terms of fiscal incentives, well, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Maria from Vestiaire Collective. It's a French resale platform. I work in public affairs, and my question is on fiscal incentives for circular companies, if it's really something that the Commission and the EU by large is really considering, or if it's just an utopia. And if so, are there any key facts that we can know so far? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think that there are two questions, let's say. So the question on origin, Mikael, I will leave it to you. The question on fiscal incentives as well. And perhaps, Ralph, for the question of the CBAM, since we have the opportunity to have a networking event afterwards, I think it can be interesting to discuss with the members of the federation. So please, Mikael, and if anybody wants to add anything, feel free.
Okay, thanks, Ralph, for the question. Now, so the issue of origin, it is one of the elements under consideration. It came up in the public consultation, in the impact assessment. Nothing has obviously been decided yet. It's one of the issues. If it will be compulsory or voluntary, we don't know yet. You need to lobby, my colleague, Ralph. But to say as regards to rules of origin, to label my shirt with origin, then the non-preferential rules of origin will be used, which means it is where the shirt is made up. It's not, so it doesn't make, we've not taken into account where the fabric comes from. It's where the shirt is made up. So that would be, if it would be compulsory, it will be based on non-preferential rules of origin. The second question on fiscal incentives, good question. It's clear what we have seen in the process when we worked on the transition pathway. We very well know that textiles operators are very small SMEs that struggle to absorb EU funding. So that's why we are aiming to come up with specific funding programs for the textiles ecosystem. We see that textiles operators get lost with pharma and the car industry, which are huge. And so we have now come up with this partnership under Horizon Europe, which is just for the textiles ecosystem. That's one funding mechanism which we have come up with. Then we are also looking at other funding mechanisms. One issue when I talk especially to the synthetic industry, which in the end is almost a chemicals industry, and it's very energy intensive. It is to provide support for alternative means of energy, solar panels, hydrogen, and so on. That's one topic we're looking at. And then I know it's also being discussed it's complicated, but it's been discussed also to have a lower VAT rate for sustainable textiles is under discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Camille, you wanted to...
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to come back on the topic of country of origin. Actually, I'm very surprised and quite sad of like listening this kind of remark. I feel that it really illustrates the step back that people could have also on this topic. I grew up in a country where actually the origin is labeled, and I really have these habits of reading it. And I think you're knocking no, but actually the sense of history is actually showing more about this traceability, and it's feasible. Every single brand have the origin of the product for the maiden, and of course it's difficult to deep dive and to explain these the complexity of the traceability, but we must do it. Otherwise we are missing a point. And I'm sorry, you're really opposite, and I see you again knowing no, but that's obviously it's something that's, to me, it's a struggle, like for a generation, like an enter and then a complete generation to like get those information on the product. So yeah, happy to have a debate and a one-to-one discussion on this, because I feel that it's really something that we should not debate on right now in 2025.
Thank you very much. Indeed, there is a lot to debate. So I would like to wrap up this panel discussion with a quote of John Marks, who wrote a book called From Vision to Action. And he was saying, entrepreneurs should not be pure visionaries. Rather, they need to be applied visionaries who produce concrete results. So thank you very much to the speakers for doing that. And I would like to give the floor to Madame Chloé Ridel, who is a member of the European Parliament. She's from the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats.
Is it working? No. It's working like that. Thank you very much. And I will be very short because I have a train to catch now. But I'm very happy to be here today to conclude this beautiful event. I congratulate you on your work. It is very important. I looked to your manifesto calling for structural reforms, including the integration of first-hand textiles into the carbon border adjustment mechanism. It will be a tough battle, I'm telling you, because people will say, okay, this will raise the price for our citizens, this will hamper the development in countries of production like Bangladesh or China, but let me tell you that it's not by delegating our production of textile to Bangladesh or China that we are going to develop those countries. We are going to enrich big businesses taking advantage of the poor workers there, but we are not going to develop those countries by letting fast fashion industries blooming there. Not like that. We are developing a country when we are funding infrastructures, health, education, etc. So we will definitely have to fight for that. You also advocate for the removal of custom duty exemptions for low-priced new products. This is very good for an adoption of what we call fast fashion, what we understand by fast fashion. I think this is very key to have a clear definition of that. And I've also heard your demand on VAT. Reduced VAT for circular products. I think this is a very good proposal, and I heard the official from DG Grow, maybe he left already, saying that it was something they were working on. So those are very positive measures, and I'm part of the Socialist and Democrat group. We are the second largest group in the European Parliament, so you can count on me to try to convince in this European Parliament to table amendments to convey your proposal. It's not going to be easy, because you know that the new political landscape in the European Parliament is difficult, and that there is a backlash against the Green Deal, but we have to make everybody understands that when Europe takes bold measures social and environmental measures, it's not hampering the competitivity of our businesses. On the contrary, it's regulating globalizations to the benefit of our companies, as long as we have good trade protections and rules to create a level playing field. But we are talking about competitiveness when we are talking about circular economy, social and environmental measures. And I think that you said it. I mean, it's difficult to implement those measures, but once they are there, it's raising the bar, and we owe this to the future generation and to ourselves. I mean, it's not a question of choice, but we have to see how to fight and win this battle. I agree that we shouldn't be weak, because, you know, when we see the strength of the fast fashion industries in front of us, and I will just quote an example of a former Ministre de l'Intérieur, like I don't know how to say it, like a very, you know, senior minister from my country, France, called Christophe Castaner, who is now working for Shein, and at the same time, the president of the board of the port of Marseille, one of the biggest ports, you know, in France, and he's working for the interest of one of the big fast fashion industry, Shein, Chinese. So we have this in front of us. So let's not be weak. Let's not think that we are being too radical, or no. I can assure you that in front of you, you have much more radical people. We are being reasonable and rational here, but we have to convince. And it's not, I mean, it's not, we are not done yet, but to end with a positive note, I can notice that there is a real change in the consumption habits of the people in my country, in our country, Majulai. I mean, people looking much more for second-hand products, you know, so there is a change and a major shift in consumption habits now. We have to push for it until we make it, until we win. So, yeah, let's work together. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I look forward to the next step of our battle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chloe, for these wise words. Thank you all for being here with us today. It was a great moment. Thank you specifically to all the speakers who are very inspiring, giving us also the pathway to go forward. Now it's our turn to do our best to continue also to mobilize around us, to make sure that the circular innovation scale in Europe, in the world. So let's go for it. Long live circular fashion.